The Vorak Galaxy Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. No species had ever stood against them and survived. No world had ever refused their demands and remained whole. They were the masters of 1,000 star systems, the rulers of 10,000 worlds, and the fear of every living thing that crawled, walked, or flew across the galaxy. Emperor Tamal the Eternal sat upon his crystalline throne on Primus, the capital world of the Empire. His 4 eyes watched the holographic display before him with mild interest. Another species had been discovered, another primitive race of creatures living on a small blue planet at the edge of the spiral arm. This happened often. The galaxy was full of such creatures, and the Vorak collected them like toys. Admiral Kova entered the throne room. He was a massive reptilian creature, covered in green scales, with teeth as long as human fingers. He had conquered 60 worlds in his career. He had never lost a battle. He bowed before the Emperor and activated his report device. "Great Emperor," Kova said, his voice like grinding stones. "Our scouts have found a new species. They call themselves humanity." The holographic display changed. It showed a planet of blue oceans and green land. Strange vehicles moved on its surface. Tall buildings of stone and metal covered parts of the land. Small, soft creatures walked on 2 legs, wearing fabric on their bodies. "They are weak," Kova continued. "They have only recently discovered space travel. They have not even colonized their nearest moon properly. They still eat cooked food. They still sleep for many hours each day. They fight among themselves, constantly." Emperor Tamal leaned forward. His 4 eyes blinked slowly. "What weapons do they have?" "Primitive explosives, basic energy weapons, nothing that could scratch the paint on our smallest warship." Kova laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping metal. "They are perhaps the weakest species we have ever found." The Emperor smiled. His mouth was full of small, sharp teeth. "Send the Grand Fleet. 10,000 ships. Give them our standard offer. Surrender and become our slaves, or we will turn their planet into dust." Kova bowed again. "It will be done, Great Emperor. They will fall within a single day." The Grand Fleet departed Primus 3 days later. 10,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. They carried weapons that had melted continents and boiled oceans. They had armies that had crushed 100 rebellions. They were the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Their message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Director Una Park received it first. She was the head of the United Nations Space Council, a small organization that most people on Earth did not even know existed. She was a woman of 43 years, with short black hair and tired eyes. She had spent her career preparing for this moment, the moment when humanity would meet alien life. She had imagined it many times. She had never imagined it would be like this. She read the message 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. Then she called an emergency meeting. The delegates gathered in a large room beneath the mountains of Switzerland. Leaders from every major nation sat around a curved table, their faces pale and worried. Una stood at the center and read the message aloud. "People of Earth," she read, "you have been discovered by the Vorak Galaxy Empire. You will surrender your planet, your resources, and your people to serve the Empire. You will become slaves. Your children will become slaves. Your children's children will become slaves forever. If you refuse, we will destroy your world completely. You have 7 days to respond." Silence filled the room. Some delegates looked sick. Others looked terrified. One man from a small European nation had tears running down his face. Then a laugh broke the silence. General Tae-woo Kim sat at the back of the room. He was 61 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face full of scars. He had fought in 3 wars. He had lost friends, brothers, and parts of himself on battlefields across the world. He was the commander of Earth's defense forces, a position that most people thought was a joke. He was not laughing because he was scared. He was laughing because he found the message genuinely funny. "This is their threat?" Tae-woo said, still laughing. 10,000 ships? That is what they think will scare us? The delegates stared at him. The man from Europe stopped crying. "General," someone said, "this is not a joke. They will destroy us." Tae-woo stood up. He walked to the center of the room, his boots making heavy sounds on the floor. He looked at the faces around him and shook his head. "Let me tell you something about humanity," he said. "We have spent 10,000 years trying to destroy ourselves. We invented the sword, then invented armor to stop the sword. We invented the gun, then invented the tank to survive the gun. We invented the nuclear bomb, then invented ways to stop the nuclear bomb." He smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "These aliens think they are scary because they have 10,000 ships. We have that many nuclear weapons on this planet alone. We built them to use on each other." He turned to Yuna. "Send them our reply." Yuna hesitated. "What should I say?" Tae-woo thought for a moment. Then he grinned, and for the first time since the message arrived, some of the delegates felt hope instead of fear. "Tell them this," Tae-woo said. "Come and try." The message was sent. 3 words. Traveling across the void of space toward the greatest military power the galaxy had ever known. 3 words from a species that had never known peace, had never stopped fighting, had never learned how to surrender. On Primus, Emperor Tomal received the reply. He read it once, then again, then a 3rd time. His 4 eyes narrowed. His advisors waited nervously. "They dare to challenge us?" the Emperor whispered. Admiral Kova stepped forward. "They are fools, Great Emperor. They do not understand what they face." Tomal nodded slowly. "Then we will teach them. Destroy their world. Leave nothing alive." The order was given. The Grand Fleet changed course toward Earth. They expected an easy victory, a quick slaughter, another world added to their collection. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Vorak Grand Fleet arrived in Earth's solar system on a cold Wednesday morning. 10,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and arranged themselves in perfect formation. They looked like a cloud of metal death, blocking out the distant stars. Each ship was larger than a human aircraft carrier. Each ship carried enough firepower to turn a continent into glass. Fleet Commander Hessa stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Eternal Conquest. She was a tall creature with blue scales and 6 arms, each one covered in medals and ribbons from her many victories. She had commanded this fleet for 200 years. She had crushed 60 rebellions. She had never known defeat. She looked at the small blue planet on her display screen and felt nothing but confidence. "Scan for their defensive fleet," she ordered. Her officers worked their controls. A moment later, one of them made a confused sound. "Commander," the officer said, "I am only detecting 50 ships." Hessa blinked. 50,000? "No, Commander. 50. Just 50. Silence fell across the bridge. Hessa stared at the display. Indeed, there were only 50 human vessels arranged between the Grand Fleet and Earth. They were small things, ugly and rough, nothing like the smooth perfection of Vorak design. Hessa began to laugh. Her officers joined her. The sound filled the bridge like thunder. They send 50 ships against 10,000? Hessa could barely speak through her laughter. "Open a communication channel. I want to speak to these fools before we destroy them." The channel opened. On the screen appeared a human male. He was young, perhaps 30 years old, with messy black hair and a tired face. He was sitting in a chair, eating something from a cup with 2 thin sticks. He looked at Hessa with no fear at all. "Hello," the human said. "I am Captain Junho Lee of the Earth Defense Vessel Defiance. Can I help you?" Quote. Hessa stopped laughing. Something about this human bothered her. He should be terrified. He should be begging for mercy. Instead, he was eating noodles. Human, Hessa said. You are facing the grand fleet of the Vorak Empire. Surrender now, and we will make your death quick. Junho slurped his noodles loudly. Oh, you are the invasion? We thought you would be bigger. Several of Hessa's officers made angry sounds. One reached for his weapon. Hessa raised a hand to stop them. You do not understand your situation, she said. We have 10,000 ships. You have 50. The mathematics is simple. Junho set down his noodles and leaned forward. Let me tell you something about humans, Commander. We are really bad at mathematics. We never do what we are supposed to do. He smiled. Also, your ships are very pretty. It would be sad if something happened to them. Hessa had heard enough. She closed the channel and turned to her weapons officer. Destroy them, she ordered. All ships, fire. 10,000 Vorak warships fired at once. Plasma cannons, energy beams, missile launchers, every weapon in the fleet activated. The space between the fleets turned bright with deadly light. It was enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The attack hit the human ships. Hessa watched, waiting for the explosions, waiting for the debris. Nothing happened. The human ships sat there, untouched. The plasma splashed against shimmering barriers of light and disappeared. The energy beams bent around the ships like water around stones. The missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible walls. What is this? Hessa whispered. On the Defiance, Captain Junho picked up his noodles again. Nice try, he said over the open channel. Our turn. Ending turn. A single human ship fired. It did not fire plasma or energy or missiles. It fired a simple metal rod, a piece of tungsten about 2 meters long. The rod accelerated to near the speed of light in less than a second. The physics was simple. When something that heavy moves that fast, it carries more energy than a nuclear bomb. The Eternal Conquest, flagship of the Grand Fleet, pride of the Vorak Empire, was hit directly in the center. The ship did not explode. It simply stopped existing. One moment, it was there. The next moment, it was a cloud of atoms spreading across space. Hessa was thrown from her bridge as her ship died around her. She managed to reach an escape pod, one of the few crew members to survive. As she launched into space, she looked back at the battle. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The human ships moved in ways that should have been impossible. They turned at angles that should have torn them apart. They accelerated at speeds that should have killed their crews. They danced through the Vorak formation like wolves among sheep. Each human ship fired those simple metal rods. Each rod destroyed a Vorak ship completely. The Grand Fleet, the pride of the Empire, was being erased from existence. Some Vorak ships tried to retreat. They activated their faster-than-light drives, trying to escape back to Primus. The human ships followed them. Within minutes, those ships were destroyed as well. In less than an hour, it was over. 10,000 Vorak warships had become 10,000 clouds of debris. The greatest military fleet in the galaxy had been defeated by 50 ships and a man who ate noodles during battle. Hessa floated in her escape pod, alone in the darkness of space. Her radio crackled. Vorak survivor. This is the Earth Defense Force. Do you require assistance? Hessa could not respond. She was too shocked to speak. These humans had just killed thousands of her people, and now they were offering to help her? She finally found her voice. Why? She asked. Why did you not destroy my pod? The human voice paused. Because you are not a threat anymore. We do not kill people who cannot fight back. That would be wrong. We. Hessa did not understand. In Vorak culture, mercy was weakness. Survivors were always killed. Always. What are you? She whispered. The human laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It sounded almost friendly. We are humans. We fight hard, but we try to be good. It is complicated. There was a pause. Do you like noodles? Captain Junho says he will share his noodles with you if you are hungry. Hessa stared at her radio. She had just witnessed her entire fleet destroyed by these creatures. And now they were offering her food. She sent one message back to Primus, a warning for Emperor Tommel. It was short and simple. They are insane. They fight like they have nothing to lose. And they offered me noodles after killing my fleet. Do not attack them. Again. The message traveled across the stars. On Earth, humans celebrated their victory. In the debris field that had once been the Grand Fleet, Hessa ate instant noodles for the first time in her life. They were delicious. Emperor Tomal refused to believe the reports. He read Commander Hessa's message 100 times. He watched the recordings from the battle over and over. He could not accept what his eyes showed him. 10,000 ships, destroyed by 50. It was impossible. It had to be a trick, some kind of deception. The humans could not be that powerful. They were primitive creatures who still needed to breathe oxygen and drink water. They died if they got too hot or too cold. They were fragile bags of meat and bone. And yet his grand fleet was gone. I need information, Tommel said to his council. I need to know how they did this. I need to know their weakness. His advisors looked at each other nervously. None of them wanted to speak. Finally, one stepped forward. He was an old creature, covered in gray scales, his eyes cloudy with age. Great Emperor, the advisor said, there is one who could find these answers. Mira, the shapeshifter. She is our finest spy. She has infiltrated 100 worlds. She has never failed. Tomal nodded slowly. Bring her to me. Mira arrived within the hour. She was a strange creature, her body flowing and changing even as she stood before the throne. Her species could take any form, copy any appearance. She had stolen secrets from kings and emperors. She had started wars and ended them with a whisper. You will go to Earth, Tomal commanded. You will take the form of a human. You will learn everything about them. Find their weakness. Find how we can destroy them. Mira bowed. It will be done, Great Emperor. She traveled to Earth alone, in a small ship that was designed to look like space debris. She landed at night, in a place called Korea, in a city called Seoul. The city was bright with lights and noise, full of humans moving in all directions. Mira took the form of a young woman with black hair and brown eyes. She wore human clothes. She walked among them, invisible in the crowd. She expected to find a world at war. She expected military bases on every corner, weapons in every hand, soldiers marching through the streets. She expected fear and anger and preparation for battle. She found none of these things. Instead, she found humans laughing, eating, talking with friends. She found children playing in parks. She found old people sitting on benches, feeding birds. She found young people looking at their phones and drinking coffee. Where was the war machine? Where were the weapons? Where was the power that had destroyed the Grand Fleet? On her second day, Mira met a young woman named Hana Choi. Hana was a university student, 22 years old, with a bright smile and a kind heart. She found Mira standing alone on a street corner, looking lost. Are you new here? Hana asked. You look confused. Mira nodded. Yes, I am. Visiting. I do not know this place well. Hana's smile grew wider. Come with me. I will show you around. Have you eaten? There is a great place for rice cakes nearby. Mira followed Hana through the city. They ate spicy rice cakes at a small shop. They drank sweet drinks from colorful cups. Hana talked about her classes, her friends, her dreams of becoming a teacher. She asked Mira about her home, and Mira invented a story about coming from a small town in the countryside. You seem very calm, Mira said carefully. I heard there was an attack recently. Aliens tried to invade. Hana shrugged. Yes, but the military handled it. They always do. She laughed. My grandfather fought in a war when he was young. My father did military service. My brother did military service. Fighting is just something we do. It is normal. Mira did not understand. You are not afraid? Hana thought about this for a moment. I was afraid, for maybe one day. Then, I saw the videos of our ships destroying the alien fleet. Did you see them? Our Captain Junho was eating noodles the whole time. Why should I be scared? That afternoon, Hana took Mira to a place called a PC Bang. It was a large room filled with computers, and humans sat at each one, staring at screens. Mira watched in confusion as the humans controlled little figures on the screens. The figures were fighting each other, shooting guns, swinging swords, casting magic spells. What is this? Mira asked. Video games? Hana said. It is fun. Do you want to try? Mira sat at a computer. She watched humans around her engage in virtual warfare for hours. They shouted at their screens. They celebrated victories. They cursed defeats. They were practicing war as entertainment. Over the following weeks, Mira learned more and more about humanity. She discovered their history, a long story written in blood and fire. They had fought each other constantly for thousands of years. They had invented weapons of terrible power, not to fight aliens, but to fight themselves. She learned about their nuclear bombs, weapons that could destroy entire cities. She learned that humans had built thousands of these weapons, pointed at each other, ready to end their own civilization at any moment. And somehow, they had not used them. They had lived with this threat for decades, going about their daily lives as if the end of the world was not hiding in underground bunkers. She learned about their soldiers. Every young man in Korea had to serve in the military. They trained for years, learning to fight, to survive, to kill. Then they returned to normal life, became teachers and doctors and shopkeepers. But they never forgot their training. They were all soldiers, waiting to be called again. She learned about their entertainment. Their movies were about war. Their games were about war. Their sports were about competition and victory. Even their business was described in military terms. They spoke of market battles and hostile takeovers and killing the competition. Humans were not a peaceful species that had learned to fight. They were a fighting species that had learned to be peaceful. War was in their blood, in their bones, in their very souls. They had simply agreed to point their weapons outward instead of at each other. Mira sent her report to Emperor Tamal. It was the most important report of her career, and it was also the most frightening. They are not a civilization that learned war, she wrote. They are a species that perfected it. They have been preparing for us for 10,000 years without knowing we existed. Every human is a soldier. Every human knows how to fight. They practice war as entertainment. They build weapons for fun. They treat death as a game. She paused, then added one final line. They cannot be defeated. They do not know how to surrender. We should make peace with them before they decide to come for us. On Primus, Emperor Tomal read the report. His 4 eyes grew wide. His hands trembled. For the first time in 12,000 years, the ruler of the Vorak Empire felt fear. Emperor Tomal spent many days thinking about Mira's report. He read it again and again. He watched recordings of human history, human wars, human weapons. He saw their nuclear explosions, their bombing campaigns, their invasion beaches covered in blood. He saw how they fought each other with such terrible fury, then sat down afterward and made peace. He began to understand why his grand fleet had failed. The Vorak had become soft after 12,000 years of easy victories. They had conquered weak species who surrendered after one battle. They had forgotten what it meant to fight an enemy who refused to give up. Humans never gave up. That was their most terrifying quality. They lost battles, lost wars, lost everything, and then they rebuilt and came back stronger. They had a saying that Tamal found disturbing. What does not kill me makes me stronger. The Vorak could not kill all the humans. So the humans would only grow stronger. There was only one option left. Diplomacy. Peace. The Vorak would have to treat humans as equals, something they had never done with any species before. But Tomal was a proud creature. His pride would not let him simply accept defeat. He formed a secret plan. He would invite a human delegation to Primus for peace talks. He would pretend to negotiate in good faith. Then, at a grand banquet, he would assassinate the human leaders and broadcast their deaths across the galaxy. This would show that humans could still be killed. It would restore fear of the Empire. It would buy time to build a new fleet, develop new weapons, find a way to defeat these impossible creatures. The invitation was sent. The humans accepted. The delegation arrived 3 weeks later. There were 3 of them. Ambassador Su Jin Yoon was their leader, a woman of 50 years with silver hair and calm eyes. She had negotiated peace treaties on 3 continents. She had ended civil wars with words instead of weapons. She was considered the finest diplomat on Earth. Dr. Do-hyun Baek was their scientific advisor, a physicist who had helped design the shields that protected human ships. He was 60 years old, quiet and thoughtful, with glasses that made his eyes look very large. He smiled often and said little. Sergeant Minho Kang was their cultural attaché. He was 35 years old, with a body made of solid muscle and eyes that missed nothing. The official documents said he was there to help with cultural exchanges. Everyone knew he was Special Forces. Tomal welcomed them to Primus with great ceremony. He showed them the crystal palaces and the gardens of living light. He introduced them to the noble families and the military commanders. He treated them as honored guests. The banquet was held in the Great Hall of Primus, a room so large it could hold 10,000 beings. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling painted with the history of the Empire. Tables stretched from one end to the other, covered with food from 1,000 worlds. The human delegation sat at the Emperor's own table. Sujin wore a beautiful dress of blue silk. Do-hyun wore a simple suit with a small flower in his pocket. Minho wore a formal military uniform that somehow made him look even more dangerous. The meal began. Servants brought dish after dish. Wine flowed like water. Music played softly in the background. Everything seemed perfect. Then, at a signal from Tamal, the assassination began. Vents in the ceiling opened. Poison gas poured into the room. It was a special gas, designed by Vorak scientists. 1 breath would paralyze most species. 2 breaths would kill them. The Vorak held their breath. They had been warned. They knew to wait until the humans collapsed. But the humans did not collapse. Sujin coughed once. She wrinkled her nose as if smelling something unpleasant. Then, she reached into her small handbag and pulled out a thin device. She pressed a button, and a small field of energy surrounded the 3 humans. "Is this a chemical attack?" she said. She sounded almost bored. "We do this to ourselves for fun. We call it tear gas. We use it at sporting events when fans become too excited." Tomal stared at her. This was impossible. The gas should have killed them instantly. Doors burst open around the Great Hall. Vorak soldiers rushed in, weapons drawn. There were 100 of them. The Emperor's personal guard. The finest warriors in the Empire. Minho stood up slowly. He picked up a butter knife from the table. He looked at the knife, then at the soldiers, then back at the knife. He smiled. "Excuse me," he said to Sujin. "I need a moment." What happened next would be discussed in Vorak military academies for generations. Minho moved through the soldiers like water through rocks. He did not seem to hurry. He did not seem to use much effort, but every soldier he touched fell down and did not get up. He used the butter knife. He used a napkin that he had folded into a strange shape. He used his hands and feet and elbows and knees. He used a plate of fish as a weapon at one point. In less than 2 minutes, 100 of the Empire's finest soldiers lay unconscious on the floor. Minho had not received a single wound. He sat back down at the table and continued eating. "The fish is very good," he said. "Can we get more?" Do-hyun nodded in agreement. He had not stopped eating during the entire attack. "Yes. The fish is excellent. What kind of fish is it? I would like to know for scientific purposes." Tomal could not move. He could not speak. He could not believe what he was seeing. And then he realized something terrible. The recording devices. This entire banquet was being broadcast across the galaxy. He had planned to show the humans' deaths to everyone. Instead, everyone was watching his humiliation. Sujin stood up. She walked toward Tomal, stepping over the unconscious bodies of his guards. She moved slowly, without fear, her blue dress flowing behind her. "Emperor Tomal," she said, "we came here in good faith. We came to make peace, and you tried to kill us." She shook her head sadly. That was a mistake. Tomal finally found his voice. "What do you want?" Sujin reached into her handbag again. She pulled out a document printed on white paper. She placed it on the table, in front of Tomal. "Here is our counteroffer," she said. "You will dissolve your empire. You will free all enslaved species. You will stop all military expansion. You will pay reparations to every world you have conquered." Tomal looked at the document. His 4 eyes went wide. "This is surrender. Complete surrender." Sujin nodded. "Yes, it is. I will never accept these terms." Sujin smiled. It was a kind smile, which somehow made it more frightening. "You do not have to accept them today. Think about it. Talk to your advisors. Watch the recording of what just happened." She leaned closer. "And remember, Minho only used a butter knife. Imagine what he could do with a real weapon." She turned and walked back to her seat. She sat down next to Do-hyun and Minho. "Now," she said pleasantly, "could someone bring us more of that excellent fish?" Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched. Slave species saw their masters humiliated. Conquered worlds saw hope for the first time in centuries. The message was clear. The Vorak were not invincible. They could be defeated. They could be embarrassed. They could be brought to their knees by 3 humans and a butter knife. The old order was ending. Something new was beginning, and it all started with a fish dinner. The recording of the banquet spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species with access to communication technology saw it. They watched Ambassador Sujin survive poison gas while complaining about the smell. They watched Sergeant Minho defeat 100 elite soldiers with a butter knife. They watched Dr. Do-hyun eat fish calmly, while chaos exploded around him. Within days, something happened that the Vorak had never experienced in 12,000 years. Their slaves began to laugh. On the mining world of Carax, where the insect-like Caraxi had worked in darkness for generations, a supervisor tried to beat a worker for moving too slowly. The worker looked at him and laughed. "You cannot even kill 3 humans at a dinner party," the worker said. "Why should I fear you?" On the agricultural planet of Veen, where the gentle Vini had grown food for Vorak tables since before anyone could remember, a rebellion began. It started with a single farmer who refused to work. When the guards came to punish him, 1,000 farmers stood with him. "The humans showed us the truth," the farmer said. "You are not gods. You are not even strong. You are just bullies who found weaker people to hurt." On 100 worlds, similar scenes played out. The fear that had held the Empire together for 12,000 years was gone. It had been replaced by something the Vorak did not understand. Memes. Humanity had discovered that the galaxy had a primitive form of their internet. Different species had connected their communication networks over thousands of years, creating a vast web of information that spanned the stars. The Vorak had used it to spread propaganda. The humans used it for something far more powerful. They created jokes. Images of Emperor Tomal's shocked face spread everywhere. Someone added text. "When you try to poison the aliens, and they ask for more fish." Videos of Minho's butter knife battle were set to human music. Young beings across the galaxy copied the movements, calling it the butter knife dance. Someone made a cartoon of Vorak soldiers being defeated by kitchen utensils. It was watched 3 billion times in a single week. The humans did not try to start a war. They did not need to. They simply shared their culture with the galaxy, and the galaxy loved it. Human movies spread like a disease. Beings who had never known anything but Vorak propaganda suddenly discovered stories about heroes who fought against impossible odds. They watched films about humans defeating aliens, humans defeating monsters, humans defeating each other. They learned that humans considered victory against a larger enemy to be the best kind of story. Human music filled the airways. Songs about freedom, songs about love, songs about fighting for what you believe in. Species that had forgotten how to hope began to remember. Human games appeared on computers across the galaxy. Young beings learned to fight virtually, to compete, to win. They learned the human way of war, played for fun instead of fear. The Vorak military tried to stop the spread of human culture. They blocked communications. They arrested beings for sharing memes. They destroyed computers and banned movies. It did not work. The harder they tried to stop it, the more the galaxy wanted it. Within 6 months, the empire was crumbling. Rebellions had spread to 40% of Vorak space. The military was stretched too thin, fighting fires on 100 fronts. Every time they crushed one rebellion, 2 more appeared. On Earth, General Tae-woo Kim held a press conference. Reporters from around the world gathered to hear his announcement. "What do you plan to do about the collapsing Vorak Empire?" A reporter asked. "Will Earth send military forces to help the rebellions?" Tae-woo shook his head. "We do not need to send soldiers. We sent something more powerful." He smiled. "We sent comedians. We sent musicians. We sent game designers." The Vorak spent 12,000 years building an empire of fear. We destroyed it in 6 months. With entertainment. Another reporter raised her hand. "What happens when the empire fully collapses? Will humanity take its place as rulers of the galaxy?" Tae-woo laughed. "We do not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to do business with it. We want to sell them movies and games and food and music. We want to learn about their science and art. We want to make friends." He paused, and his eyes grew serious. "But if anyone tries to enslave or threaten us or our new friends, we will remind them what happened to the Grand Fleet. We are friendly people, but we are not weak people. There is a difference." On Primus, Emperor Tamal finally surrendered. He had no choice. His military was broken. His economy had collapsed. His own people were sharing human memes and laughing at him in the streets. He signed the document that Sujin had given him at the banquet. The empire was dissolved. All slaves were freed. The stolen wealth of 1,000 worlds would be returned. As he signed, Tomal asked Sujin a question that had been bothering him for months. "Why did you not simply destroy us? You had the power. You could have killed us all." Sujin thought for a moment. "Because that is not who we are. We have done terrible things in our history. We have destroyed and killed and conquered. But we have also learned from our mistakes. We know that empires built on fear do not last. We would rather build friendships that last forever." Quote. She smiled. "Also, your fish really was delicious. We would hate to lose that recipe." She said in Undain Ui. Nover 1. We would hate to lose that recipe. On Earth, in a small apartment in Seoul, Hana Choi received a message on her phone. It was from her friend, Mira, the strange woman she had met months ago on a street corner. "Hello, Hana," the message said. "I have something to tell you. I am not human. I am a Vorak spy named Mira. I was sent to your world to find your weaknesses." Instead, I found your strengths. I found kindness and laughter and spicy rice cakes. I have decided to defect. I want to stay on Earth. I want to be your friend for real this time. Can you forgive me? Hana stared at the message for a long moment. Then she started typing. I knew you were not human. You did not know what a selfie was. Nobody who grew up on Earth would not know that. She added a small, laughing face. But you were kind to me, and you bought me lunch twice. So I forgive you. Come visit soon. We are having a barbecue next week. You will love Korean barbecue. Everyone loves Korean barbecue. She sent the message, then added one more thought. Also, bring some of that Vorak fish if you can. I heard it is really good. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The Vorak Empire was no more. Humanity had won. Not through war, but through culture. They had defeated the greatest military power in history with jokes, songs, and a man who fought with kitchen utensils. On 1,000 worlds, freed slaves looked up at the stars and wondered what would come next. They did not know the answer, but for the first time in generations, they were not afraid to find out. And somewhere in space, Commander Hessa, who had survived the destruction of the Grand Fleet, watched the recordings of the new free galaxy. She was eating instant noodles, a habit she had picked up from the humans who rescued her. She thought about everything that had happened. The war, the defeat, the collapse of everything she had known. Then she laughed. They are insane, she said to herself, slurping her noodles. Absolutely insane. But she was smiling as she said it. And for the first time in her long life, she was free. The galaxy had changed forever. And it had all started because one empire made the mistake of challenging a species that had spent 10,000 years learning how to fight, how to laugh, and most importantly, how to make really good noodles.